Loving Sai Ram, Dr. Durjati Mudigonda of the alumnus of the Sri Satya Sai Institute of Higher Learning, Prashanti Nilayam. Welcome to the series Awake, Unite and Inspire, a series produced under the divine auspices of the Sri Satya Sai Global Council, West Indies. We are extremely honored, happy, and blessed to have you as our guest on this evening's program. And brother, I know that you have been blessed by Bhagwan himself in the playing of this divine instrument, the Veena. So just before we begin the actual conversation, could you do a divine offering for us to begin this interview?
Om Shri Sai Ram, absolutely. We'll start with the bhajan that Bhagavan gave to all of us, Manas Bhajale Guru Charanam.
Brother, that was absolutely soulful and divinely enthralling. So beautiful, so inspirational. Can you share a little bit about the background of this particular song and how it came
Sure,
into existence?
sure, absolutely. As I think every Sai devotee knows that this is the bhajan that Swami first sang. And the bhajan itself is, the words are Manasa Bhajare Guru Charanam, Dustara Bhavasagara Taranam, Guru Maharaj Guru Jai Jai, Sainatha Sadguru Jai Jai, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Shivaya Namo Om. Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Aruna Shiva Om. Omkaram Bhava, Omkaram Bhava, Omkaram Bhava, Om Namo Baba. So this bhajan actually is a extraordinary significance for multiple reasons. Not only that Bhagavan, gave this as the first bhajan to all of us to sing and follow him, but the meaning is extraordinarily profound because the bhajan itself starts with Manasa Bhajare. So Swami starts with uh, the thing that needs to be transformed when the avatar, when the incarnation comes down, is the mind of humans. So Swami starts with the bhajan where he says, "Your mind is come to give you the mind to repeat the name of God." Manasa Bhajare Guru Charanam. Actually, in this case, Swami says the feet of the Guru, the ultimate teacher. Swami called himself Satya Bodhaka, the teacher of the truth. So mind must follow the feet of the Guru. What is meaning of following the feet of Guru? I mean, you think about that. Feet is what you stand on and what you stand for. So in this context, we take it as what the Guru stands for. So the mind must worship what the Guru stands for, and which in this case is our own salvation. So Guru stands for salvation, so mind must really go after salvation of our own selves. So very beautifully Swami starts with the first sentence there. Then he goes on to tell us Manasabhajale Guru Charanam Dustara Bhava Sagara Taranam. So the worldly life is going to be extraordinarily painful. No matter what your situation is, wealthy, not wealthy, educated, not educated, whatever may be the situation, we all will have difficulties in life. That is the purpose of life. So he's warning us, this life is going to be difficult and you will need to follow the Guru. Then comes, the third line comes, Manasavajra Guru Charanam, Dustarabhava Sagara Guru Maharaj, Guru Jai Jai. Now we have to worship the Guru. That's what Swami is saying. The way to go past this is to worship the Guru. And then he says, Sainatha Sadguru Jai Jai. We don't even need to search. In this case, the incarnation is so kind to us that Swami said, I am the master. For us to recognize somebody greater than us is not an easy task. So in this case, the Bhagavan himself is coming back and telling you, don't need to search, I am the Guru. Then he comes back and gives you the Panchakshari mantra, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, because he asks us to repeat that. And with that, the next line is Arunachala Shiva, which is again another beautiful way Swami gives these clues for us in terms of his mission. Arunachala is supposed to be the one word which, when you remember, just the remembrance of Arunachala, repetition of Arunachala gives you moksha per the scriptures. So Swami is telling you, I'll give you the mantra, which is Om Namah Shivaya, which is the Namaswarana. With that, you will attain salvation. And what is that salvation? He says, Om Karam Bhava. So you become the Om itself. So very beautifully, there is so much profound meaning in this wonderful, wonderful bhajan. And it's very dear to me. And thanks for asking that, Brother Faiz. Thank you, Saira.
Thank you very much, brother, for that very beautiful and very deep explanation of what it really means to worship in the mind the feet of the Guru. So beautifully you've put it, to follow what the Guru stands for. That is so very valuable to us as spiritual aspirants on the path. Thank you so much for sharing. So, brother, how did you first come into contact with our beloved Mother Sai?
Oh, that's a wonderful story. I think every one of us have a wonderful story when you ask them, how did you come to know about Swami, or how did you get to meet Swami or see Swami. And we all know that Swami has told us innumerable times that the only way we get to know of him is when he wills that you get to know of him. And there is only a select few that Swami, we got to know about Swami, and we all had the greatest opportunity to live at the same time as Bhagwan lived and walked on this planet. And in our case too, it's a beautiful, beautiful story of how Swami uh, uh, drew our family to his lotus feet. It happened when I was actually 3 year old. At the time, my father was an agnostic of beliefs. He was not. He was neutral to God. He didn't take one side or the other. Although he came from a very traditional family, that is something that, due to the difficulties in life, sometimes we we get frustrated and we want to not even think about a higher force because you think that there is no point. And just around that time, there was a great difficulty, a great challenge that we had to face as a family with the health of one of our cousins. And and at the time, my father and my uncle, they went around trying to get a medical treatment to my cousin, and with no real, with no real success. So somebody told my father, "Is why don't you try going to uh, Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba?" See, we lived in the same state at the time as Puttaparthi is. That said, we were about 500 kilometers or so away from Puttaparthi, and especially in 60s and 70s, it could be a foreign country for the distance, and with no communication, with no real transportation ease, it was very difficult to even go. And so 71 December, I think, is when my parents first went as a whole family to Bhagwan. And it's a wonderful story. And the day they land on a evening, and then the next morning Swami calls them for interview. He calls my father for interview, and and my father talks about the challenge that we were going through as family. And then Swami gives 3 bottles of medicine, and he says, you know, she'll be all right. And he gives a particular date by which she'll be all right. And it was exactly to the T. The day Swami said she was going to be all right, and she dramatically became all right. And I think that's where, once and for all, in our family, Bhagwan was recognized as the Lord of the Lords, who runs the universe and who runs our lives. And nothing actually, whether it is karma, whether it is horoscopes, nothing really mattered, because the only thing that mattered is uh, focusing on Swami, and he took care of your life, and he put you on the path that he wants you to be on. And so that was how my parents came to Swami. And being a child at the time, we were automatically, drawn into Sai Swami's worshipping Swami, doing bhajans, doing service. And the town that we lived in, it was called as Siddipit. It's a small little town near Hyderabad, and that's where there was an enormous amount of Swami's activities, and just our lives revolved around Swami since that time. And that said, I want to actually narrate a second piece to this, which is, this a faith, so to speak, I derived from my parents. But when I had the opportunity to stay or study in Swami's college, in the first year of my stay, I did have to confront this question: do I believe in Swami? I mean, I've seen Swami. Do I believe in Swami? And that question also, first of all, I had to make sure that it was a sincere question, not something that I'm asking just to challenge Swami. And it actually meant something, because the answer should really help me. So it was a lot of inner, uh, I would say, evaluations I had to go through. And Swami responded to that question and gave me an experience to recognize that he is no ordinary human being. So, with these two as background, I still have to work constantly to push the mind off and to hold on to Swami's feet, because the world is very powerful. It is also creation of Swami. It's very powerful, and every now and then we feel like, am I on the right path? And so that faith had to become firm for us to really make solid progress. So these, I want to say, so three components to that. One is family-based, faith that I got to develop initially, and it was beautiful. We enjoyed those years when I didn't have to question Swami. And then when I went to Puttaparthi to study, when I confronted the question, do I believe in Swami? I was a 15-year-old at the time, 14 to 15-year-old at the time. So I had to ask the question. Then later on, when I left Prashanti, I still had to reaffirm my conviction and the courage to stand by those convictions that Bhagavan blessed. That is something that we had to go through, I had to go through in my life. Saira.
So, brother, at a very tender age, you were born into a Sai family at the tender age of 3. And what a blessing it is at that age. You may not have understood or recognized, but just being in that ambience and also the grace of your parents at that tender age of 3 is truly a blessing. And then I know that from 1982 to 1989, you spent your university years under the divine watchful eye of Mother Sai. But share with us, I know as an alumnus of the Sri Satya Sai Institute of Higher Learning, so many wonderful experiences you would have had over the years and continue to have. But can you pull out 2 of your most memorable and share with us?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So, as you rightly said, staying around Swami's physical proximity is a blessing that he conferred, not because we deserved it, but out of his extraordinary karuna and love. And it was a magical time to spend near Swami, whether it is in the hallways, whether just watching the devotees go in and come out transformed from the interview rooms, and the innumerable stories that we heard from our own brothers and friends who were studying along with us, their own families, their own problems, how Swami would take care. And I, I want to narrate two incidents that have made an immense impact on me. Uh, the first one is one of those evenings, routinely when Swami calls for interviews, we used to sit inside the bhajan hall, and you would see Swami from the door of the bhajan hall, Swami going into the interview room. Then he would come out after completing the interviews. Then you would see devotees leave. And many times we have no idea what transformed, what happened, inside the interview room. And the few times we got to see, and from also listening to so many speeches online, we come to know that every one of those sessions was life transforming for so many devotees that have gone into those, that were given that wonderful, wonderful blessing by Bhagavan. So in one of those evenings, Swami called one of the devotees who was apparently sitting in a wheelchair. I mean, he was disabled, physically disabled, and he couldn't walk. So he was being pushed in a wheelchair, and it was not normal to open both the doors of interview room. Interview room has two doors, and Swami generally opens one door, and then you just walk in. So they, because of the wheelchair, they had to open both the doors, and then the wheelchair was pushed in. And when Swami completes his interview, and he opens the door and he comes out, and he's standing where we were all sitting inside the bhajan hall. And then all these devotees were walking back, and then we see the gentleman who went in the wheelchair. Now he's pushing his own wheelchair and walking. And it was, it was a tremendous sight to see how somebody could just go in and a wheelchair and then come back, walking and pushing his own wheelchair, the empty wheelchair, out of the interview room. So one of our dear brothers, kneels down and says, "Swami, you are such a, you are the Lord of the Lord, Swami. So much grace that you showered, and you helped him to walk back. You gave him the abilities to walk back. You are the God of the gods." Then Swami smiles and he puts his hand on this brother's shoulder, on his back actually, and he says, "You see, I touched you, nothing happened in you. I touched him just the same way I touched you, and he was able to walk." Obviously, I'm paraphrasing, and Swami said this. This is what the meaning of the conversation was. So Swami said, "When I touched you, nothing happened, but when I touched him, he was able to get up from his wheelchair and walk." He said the power is same in both the cases. The faith is different. And I think this was a wonderful message that I carry all my life. There are two aspects. I think Swami actually wrote a letter where he says, the bird with you, the wing with me. There was where he says it's a samyak sankalpa. It's a will of both the devotee and the God that actually transforms everything. So there is a role for us to be played as given by him only. And even as a devotee, there is a role for us to play. The role is to develop the immense faith so we can actually be confident in ourselves, so we can actually become to transform ourselves into what Swami wants us to become. So that is something that was a wonderful experience that I, as I said, I carry all my life. The second one is also it's a very teachable moment for me. In this case, it was one of those incidents which was in the context of our own family. So one time my father sends a telegram saying that mother is, he said the mother is very sick, and she was actually in the emergency care in the hospital. And then my father just sends telegram. It was just one, two sentences, and he said, "Pray to Swami." So in the evening, I carry the telegram and I go sit in front of, in the first line. You get to sit when you had a reason to ask Swami for, pray to Swami. The hostel warden would give you permission to sit there. So as soon as Swami's, door opens for darshan, you would be right in front, so you could actually get up and ask Swami for whatever that you need. So I kneeled down with a telegram in my hand, and Swami just looked through me. Actually, he didn't even acknowledge that I was there, and I really felt very sad, and then I was crying really, both internally and also externally too. And I was thinking, Swami, this one time when I really need you, when our family really needs you, I don't see you. I don't have your support. And that churning was going on internally for a long time. And as long as Swami went for his darshan, then he comes back, and my eyes were filled with tears. I couldn't even see Swami. I had my head bent. Then Swami was walking in the VIP, lines there. And then from the back of the VIP line, almost close to the bhajan hall's entrance, from the back, Swami, calls for me. He says, "Hey, Durjati," and then some people tap on me, say, "Hey, Swami is calling." So I get up and I wipe my eyes, and then I go to Swami and I kneel down. And Swami looks at me and he says, Ammaki, heart problem, angina. So Swami says, your mother has angina. He says, don't worry, I'll give you vibhuti, send it to her and she'll be all right. And then Swami creates vibhuti, and then I send it to my mother, and she was all right after that. I mean, they continue to live in Puttaparthi now, both my parents. And with Bhagwan's grace, and only by Bhagwan's grace, that they both actually are blessed with the health that they're blessed with. And but that incident wasn't a something that I had to ponder a lot. I was thinking, why is it that when I stood there first time, when I kneeled up, I kneeled there and I asked Swami for help, he didn't even respond. Why did he have to let me go through so much churning? Why did he have to make me go through the pain of, asking, you're not there when I need you? Because he was there. Before even I knew what my mother's disease was, he diagnosed, right in the hallways. So he was there, but he didn't let me know that. And I think this is something that the lesson I got out of that is that there are two just again, less the way the other two, there are two components for, when we want Swami's grace, I narrated just a few minutes ago, is that you ask, but then you have to be prepared to receive. So asking is one half, and preparing to receive is the second half. In general, when we ask, we also provide the solution. So it's not like we go and tell him our problem, but we also tell Swami what the solution we like for it, the problem to be resolved. I think that is ignorance, in my opinion. At least that's what I feel about myself. Is that because when you go to a doctor, you don't provide a solution. You let the doctor tell you what the solution is, what the prescription is. In this case, when you go to the Lord of the Lords, you present your problem. Then you wait for the solution and the time he decides when the solution should be implemented. And then those two components we have to learn. And what does preparation mean? Preparation really, I think, is having no expectation other than leaving everything to Swami. Now that you gave your problem to Swami, you let go. Swami talks about this wonderful Chinnakatha, these small little stories that he would talk about, where he says, when you get on a train, don't carry the luggage on your head. You put the luggage on the luggage rack that is there for the use of putting the luggage. He said, no matter whether you put the luggage on your head or on the rack, the train is going to carry regardless. Knowing that when we come across a challenge in our lives, I think it is imperative, it is actually wonderful and easy for us to do. The thing to do for us is to hand it off to Bhagavan and say, Swami, please take care of this. And he does. And he does without fail. He does without any complaints. How many ever times we go, Swami would actually fulfill your wish. In fact, Puttaparthi has, wish fulfilling tree that Swami put. And even the interview room is called Korikala Gadi, which is wish fulfilling room. See, Bhagavan grants all our wishes, but he wants us to learn what is the right thing to ask for. So the both components, he fulfills, but then he also tells you what you can wish for, so that is actually meaningful and that gets you out of this bondage. So wonderful, wonderful, teaching for me from that. Every moment of our stay in Puttaparthi, every word that Bhagavan uttered, every instance that we were witness to was a wonderful teaching, if only we had the abilities to, think through that and internalize it. And even more luckier are the ones who are able to practice that. So those are the two incidents that come to my mind, Brother Faiz. Saira.
Thank you very much, brother. What a wonderful two experiences you've had with Swami and what powerful lessons. But the one with the train and the luggage is very interesting because you mentioned about surrender, that when we really surrender a challenge, a question, or a problem to Him, we should really leave it at His lotus feet. And whatever happens, take it as His divine will. So He will decide when and where and how. But when you go back to that example in the train, imagine somebody goes into the train, has the luggage on their head. The train is carrying both you and the luggage. You could so easily put it in the luggage compartment. So even though you have it on your head, the train is still taking you, but it's at great inconvenience because it's causing a problem with your head. Because when the train tilts, you're going to tilt. When it goes forward, you might collapse and fall. And it's so foolish for you to keep carrying the luggage.
Right.
And so, what a lesson. All we have to do is let go of that luggage and place it in the divine compartment hands, and He will take it to the right destination. So, very, very beautiful message, brother. And I know there is a little village close to where you grew up called Siddipit. I am aware that there have been amazing experiences of Bhagwan, His love and compassion, His manifestations that are truly mind boggling. And you lived in a village very close or there. Please share one or two of those wonderful experiences.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. That this is something I think the words don't even capture the grandeur of Bhagwan's uh, f- uh, omnipresence. This was a little town near the city of Hyderabad. That's where we lived in the town. Uh, it's grown now over the years, but in early 70s, by 7:30, 8 o'clock, I think the whole town was basically shut off. Especially in 70s, I think people who grew up would recognize most of the life would come to screeching halt by the time it is dark.
Brother, could you increase volume a little bit?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Right.
Let me see if I
In your
can.
speech, no, in your talk, if you could increase the volume in your speech.
Yep, I will. Is this any better? Is this any better? Sairam, is this any better?
This is much better.
Okay, so sorry. So Siddipet was a town near the city of Hyderabad, and as I said earlier, it was within the same state of Andhra Pradesh, but due to lack of transportation and lack of communications, it could have been in a foreign country to Puttaparthi. So Bhagavan entered, that town with, some of the devotees. Some people became devotees of Swami, and and in one of the devotees' home, Swami stayed while he was physically present in Puttaparthi. He was also present in that devotee's home for about 2 years, I believe. And these 2 years in that family, they had seen. I mean, they would. I mean, Swami was there like another person, and then they had Swami's room. There was a huge house that they had. Swami would stay in a room, and he would interact with them. They would take food to Swami, and Swami would eat. And as devotees that lived in the town, we got to witness. We did not. Many of us did not see Swami. Some of us did, but some of us did not see Swami. But you still witness the presence of Bhagavan. So in that they would take a plate of food and leave it in Swami's room. They come back and then close the door, and then Swami would eat the food and drink water, and then wipe his hands was a kerchief, and you would handkerchief, you would actually see the turmeric marks from the food on that. And some of us still have those handkerchiefs from that time. And in our own family, Bhagavan also did the Aksharabhyasam, that is the writing. The first time a child is given the teaching. I mean, this is a ritual where the first time the student, a child who is now becoming a student, will learn to write. So the way they do is to get an elderly person generally, or a guru of the family, to write the first Om, and then the child will just trace that Om. So in our case, we were, as I said, we were living far off from Puttaparthi, but our family was devoted to Swami. And as I said, Swami was present in actually not just one home, many homes they would see Swami like that. And in one of these homes, we put this slate in front of Swami's photograph, Swami's chair, and then you put a little chalk, and you pray, Swami, Aksharabhyasam to my son. That's what my father prayed. Then you come out, you close the door, and then after some time they open the door, they go in, and then it was written Om on one side and Om Namah Shivaya on the other side. Our family's deity is the Lord Shiva. So it is written Om Namah Shivaya on the back side, and then my brother traces that, and we still have that slate in our home. And I mean, there are innumerable miracles and experiences, and they're only miracles when we think it is not normal. But growing up at the time, it was absolutely normal. We believed that Bhagavan is everywhere, and so it is natural for us to, see this. That question, there is no real question about does this happen, I mean, those thoughts didn't even cross our minds. The photograph of Swami is as real as a live, physical, present Swami. Actually, that is true for all of us even now. If only we can respond to he behaves the same way in the photograph as a real Swami. If only we recognize it, the joy we get is immense out of that. So one other incident I'll narrate from that is, Bhagavan is our spiritual master, and he is ruthless about that. In that, the moment he sees something he needs to correct you, he takes charge and he corrects it. Whether in physical presence he did to many of us, and many devotees can attest to that, where Swami guided them in their spiritual practice, although their spiritual practice was happening miles and miles away. In fact, in my own father's case, when he became a devotee to Bhagavan, and we were in Siddipit at the time, and my father would go and meditate for 4 to 5 hours. He would do meditation, puja, and he would close the door, and he would do really elaborate puja for Bhagavan. And then when he went back to Puttaparthi, Swami talked to him in the interview room. He said, Bangaru, why do you sit in the puja room for 5 hours? It is all that you want to do is Swami was saying that you want your wife, that is my mother, to go and tell anybody who comes home that, no, he is in puja, and then they need to be impressed that, oh, he is sitting in puja for 5 hours, he is a great person. He said, no, your mind cannot be focused that much time. Do small, do short times where you can be focused and continue to progress. And you need to watch, I'm paraphrasing, watch our egos in that. So this is the factor. Ego is a big component that Bhagavan works on all of us. And so in this town, when although people are living in this wonderful, it's like Krishna, in Krishna's, how we hear stories in Bhagavatam, that's how it was in the town, because so many homes that you would see Swami stay, Swami, respond, Swami eat food, Swami would solve their physical problems. Swami gave, Swami, they could see Swami, where Swami gave vibhuti packets. So for some people, Swami gave money to go to Puttaparthi. I mean, there is a variety of miracles. But this incident is one beautiful incident. Again, one more teachable moments. So there were two, like every Sai, centers and towns where we have a lot of Sai devotees. There are still some prominent people, within the communities. So there were two, elders in the Sai family in that town who both used to, they were very wonderful, wonderful human beings and wonderful devotees, yet both used to feel that, they were the leaders. It's a subconscious feeling, it's not even deliberate. And it's not an explicit feeling where they say, well, I'm the leader, but they feel that, oh, I think I'm the most important person here. So for Swami's birthday, so they brought a cake, and then the cake was, still wrapped up. And then they got a knife, and then these two, wonderful devotees are thinking in their minds that they're going to call me to cut the cake because I'm the, VIP here. And so then both of them are thinking who they'll call, and then they open the cake. I mean, the devotees open the cake. Then they see the cake was already cut and the piece actually was full front. Where I think both of them got the message that in this case, Swami actually cut the cake. Although cake was brought in, freshly made, the cake was cut by the time they opened it. So Bhagwan, it's not only a wonderful experience for everybody, but it's also a wonderful, teaching for the people who are involved. So it's just a lovely phase of our lives that we all cherish. I think everybody who lived there in the town can vouch for the wonderful, wonderful experiences they all were blessed with. So those are some of those Siddipit memories.
So, brother, very, very interesting and amazing. You said in this particular home, Swami actually lived with his family for 2 years. So these devotees could actually see the physical Swami in their home. Others could not, while Baba was physically present in Prashanti Nilayam.
That's
So he
correct.
would have food, he would take bath, and live what we might call a normal existence in this particular home.
Right.
That is absolutely mind boggling. And not only in that home, but many homes in the village, there were manifestations of Swami just like this. And as you
Right.
said, we may look upon this as abnormal and miraculous, but at that time it was a normal happening.
That's absolutely right. And in the house that Swami stayed, I was witness to this too. I was young, but I still remember this part. On Shivaratri day, as I said, they had a huge house. And on Shivaratri day, when we went in, the whole house was filled with vibhuti. Every inch of the house, they had vibhuti on the floor. It's just grand. I mean, the Bhagwan, chose for whatever the reason that village and those, the town and those the families to show his immense omnipresence. It is it is something that when you think about God as omnipresent, that's natural. In fact, when we were in the town, I will narrate one more beautiful incident. So my father was a lecturer in Telugu language, and so he used to teach at the college there. And so we had a photograph of Swami, the one I think most of us have seen, where Swami has created this golden Krishna. I think it was in Dwapara that Swami actually sits on the sands and he's holding the photograph, Krishna, that's a photograph. It was framed. So one evening, my father thinks, Swami, every time you sign in English or sometime Telugu, but you are God, you should sign in Sanskrit. So this is a thought. And again, as I told you, this is miles and miles away from Puttaparthi. And next morning, when my father wakes up, in the photograph in our puja room, the photograph with the Krishna, there is a signature of Bhagavan, which is actually golden, uh, it's written with a gold ink, Om, but inside the photo frame, not outside. I mean, the signature came from within the photograph of a framed photo, actually. So, and another beautiful thing is, when you think about Swami's actual signature, it is Omkara, because he is the source of this universe that is a pranava. So, very beautiful, again, experience from Siddipet.
Thank you very
I,
much, brother, for that very divine and inspiring sharing. So, what does Sai Baba mean to you today?
So, as I said, I was blessed not because I did anything special. I don't think I'd even deserve it, but with the great blessing of Bhagavan, with great kindness of Bhagavan, and great punyam and blessings of my parents and grandparents, I was born in a family where I didn't even have to ask the question of Swami's divinity for a long time. And it was a joy to have lived like that. And so, Swami is the center of my life. And when I think of Swami, the words that come up in my mind are love, are compassion, grace, teacher, and my master and my friend. In in the 50 plus years that now I have been associated with Bhagavan, he took care of every need of me materially and spiritually to guide me, to hold my hand and walk me in the path that he wants. Through the troubles, through the joys, I always think that Bhagavan is holding me and carrying me. And Bhagavan has response. I mean, I think every one of us have this experience where when we really reach out to Swami, he responds. He responds profusely. I mean, he is, Swami talks about this Gajendra Moksham story where, where the elephant, who is caught by the alligator, is praying. Where his foot was caught by the alligator. He's praying to Lord Vishnu, and until he says, "Nive tappa itapparam beriganu," I mean, which is, you are the only one that I can depend on. That's all. You are the only one who can save me. At the time, supposedly Vishnu runs without even, because Lakshmi Devi is holding his hands and he runs at the moment. I think that's how Swami has come to rescue and to take care of me all the time. And I know this is a personal experience for so many devotees. I think Swami does this to every one of us, whether we believe in him or not, whether we recognize that or not, he still does. But the joy is when you recognize that he is the one who is taking care of us, of our lives, and of making us walk on the path. It is a joy that just fills you, and it is something that that you really are grateful for Bhagavan for making you realize that. So in my case, I feel that is Swami for me. I think Swami is the one who gave me to build my own confidence within myself. Swami is the one who gave me the courage to live of convictions. He gave me the convictions and he gave me the courage to live off the convictions. I think this is something that I cannot even begin to talk about how grateful I am to Swami that I am. So this is what Bhagavan means to me. He is Lord of the Lords. He is the master of the universe for me. Saira.
Thank you very much, brother, for your sharing. And I know that through Swami's grace, his will, and his compassion, you now play that beautiful divine instrument called the Veena. You have inspired so many people with its music and awakening such beautiful vibrations in the soul. Share with us, how did you come to play the Veena, and can you share one or two experiences of playing it in front of Bhagwan himself?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. That's again a blessing that is an amazing time that Swami gave. So in 70s, as I understand, during darshan time, there was a great devotee. Her name was Srimati Vijaya. She used to play Veena while Swami used to give darshan. Then over the years, I think she stopped playing. I don't know the reasons, but she was not continuing that anymore. So when I went to Puttaparthi in '82, uh, Veena is an instrument that I learned from my father. and who learned from his brother. And our family was a music family. My grandfather, Sri Sadashivaya Garu, was a great musician. He passed away in 1945 when my father was 3 year old. But that music as a tradition continued in our families. Although over the years we have taken up different careers other than music, but music continued, as a skill, as an art that we pursued in our families. So Veena is some an instrument that I learned from my father, who continues to play. In fact, my father played it in Swami's Divine Presence also. My father taught me the instrument of Veena and also the spirit of music. How you use Veena to uh, to derive bliss. Just not the subject, but also the sadhana part of that. So I learned from my father. So when I went to Puttaparthi, my father said, now that you're in Swami's school, you must ask for Swami's permission to play Veena in his presence. And so when I joined in my 11th standard in 1982, I was a 14-year-old boy at the time. So one day I get up and I say, Swami, I would like to play Veena in your in presence. Swami, a lot of the arts that we, he is, there's no one superior to Swami. He is the ultimate. And yet, in his presence, the small little human dots, he makes us feel so comfortable to be able to reach out to him. It is like talking to a friend. And Swami jokes with me the first time I asked Swami. Swami said, where will you play the Veena? You want to bring your Veena and sit on the, those coconut trees like a monkey and play? Where would you want to play? Then I said, no, Swami, I like to play. Like everybody was smiling. See, Swami eases you into a conversation where he wants you to consider him as your friend. He says, walk with me, not behind me, not in front of me. So we hold his hand and we walk with him. To facilitate that, Swami puts us into this, ease where, Swami jokes and he says, well, Sudam, he said, means we'll see. And then after a few days, Bhagavan came to the visit hostel. And then Swami asked, I was sitting somewhere in the back, and Swami asked some people in the front, where is the Veena boy? Is he going to play? And nobody knew who the Veena boy was, and I did not even know that this conversation happened. So again, I asked Swami, after a few days, I asked Swami in the veranda, I said, Swami, would you please give me permission to play Veena in your presence? And then Swami said, where will you play? I said, Swami, I'll play in the bhajan hall during your darshan. Then he said, do you have a Veena? I said, Swami, yes, Swami, there is a Veena in the, in the mandir I can use. Then Swami said, okay, you talk to Kutumbarao and then and play. So then I got in touch with Sri Kutumbarao Garu, who used to manage, was the secretary for the ashram at the time. And after a few days, I ended up playing the Veena in the bhajan hall. I mean, this is a sight that I think gods will envy, because it was such a beautiful, beautiful blessing to be in the bhajan hall. And at the time, they wouldn't have any devotees, just bhajan hall would be empty. And then Swami's throne, and I would sit right in front of Swami's footrest. And then as you see the silhouette of Swami through the window glass, there's an opaque glass there behind the throne. You see Swami get down the stairs just before the darshan. Then I would start playing. Then Swami would beautifully open the door for the interview room. That's where Swami would come out for the darshan. Then he would just stand there with his both, a palm in his other hand. He just stands there and he lets you take all this beautiful divine darshan into your heart. Just the serenity, the beautiful peace that for the divine master standing there is what each one of us got to soak in. And that was the time I would be playing bhajans, and then Swami would walk for the darshan. I did not have there was no microphones. I would just play inside the bhajan hall. And then Swami would come inside occasionally. He would sit on the footrest. Then he would ask me to play, play Swami asked me, sometimes he'll say, play Kashayambara, which is in Nirupama Gosadhana. I think most of us know this bhajan. He'll say, play Kashayambara. And it's very beautiful because the way Swami would, always remind you that the ultimate divine is in front of you. Don't lose the opportunity. And he will remind you of that out of extraordinary compassion. And physically also, on the material level, Swami would comment on the way I played a lot of mistakes. I mean, my abilities as a Veena player is minuscule. There are wonderful artists out there who play beautifully. Even when I think about skill itself is very very limited. Yet Bhagavan chose to give me that as a path to pursue uh, pursue him, pursue happiness, pursue the joy, pursue the bliss. So that music as a vehicle is what I think Swami gave more than this, putting attention on the skill itself. I mean, not that it was not important. And Swami actually commented so many times on lots of areas that I needed to improve, and he wanted me to practice a lot, and he wanted me to learn properly, and he told me what ragas to learn. So I'm not trying to minimize the aspect of learning properly and practicing to get to levels of as good a level of perfection as you can get. But that is not the end goal there. That is just a preparation. The actual objective is beyond the achieving a skill levels of perfection, which many in the world achieve, and many achieve to really, really high levels. But without pursuing further that skill, I think it gets wasted because that objective is never achieved beyond just the skill portion. So this is something that I think Bhagavan beautifully taught us. It was so easy because when Swami was physically present in front of you, it was easy to long for him. It was easy to, crave for the opportunity to have Swami in front of you and then play for Swami's. At the time, I thought I was playing for Swami's joy, but really, it was Bhagavan is always joyful. He doesn't need any external, person to make him happy. He was giving me the chance to figure out how to become joyful with the uh, with the vehicle of music. So that is what my experience of playing Veena in Swami's divine presence, and it was a grace that he conferred. Again, one more time, I would remind my own self, not because I deserved it, because his love has no reason, his grace has no reason. It is ever flowing, and he showers us, he drenches us in his grace because he wants to. There's really no reason for it. Sairam.
Brother, that is so touching, so soulful. But I want to go back to the experience you shared, where at times you would be alone with Swami, alone with this omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient God in physical form. You and God alone, and you are there playing and offering Him your music through the sitar. What was that experience like? What were you feeling while you were actually playing and looking at our majestic Lord?
That's a very beautiful scenario too, as you described. To be alone with Swami really is like being with your mother and father. It's your own family. Because Swami, we are all children to Swami. And when our mind is focused on Swami, no matter physically we are alone or not, in reality we are only alone with Swami and ourselves. In fact, Swami talks about this in the context of Sai centers too. He says when we go to a Sai center, it is the individual sadhana in a group environment. So in my case, Bhagavan gave me the wonderful opportunity of even physically being alone in that bhajan hall, where we were just, I think you were at the most relaxed state of your life. You are most secure with knowing that just Swami, the Lord, is sitting in front of you, and you are His child. And the only relationship you have with Swami is that you are His child. And when you play for Swami, I used to long for this experience, because I had for for first few years, I had this wonderful opportunity where there was nobody else in the bhajan hall. It was just me, and whenever Swami came in, it was just me and Bhagavan. I never really thought about it that way to start with. I always felt that Swami came, and then because these thoughts never really occurred that, oh, I'm alone, or nothing like that, isn't it? It was just that Swami came, and I'm playing for Swami, and that was the only interaction. And when Swami looks at you, his eyes are fully, you are the apple of his eyes. And when I looked at Swami, he filled me. That's it. That's all I can think of in those moments. And I used to crave for this, over the years. Then over the years, I said, so I never had that chance later on in my stay. And so I used to crave for that. And so once in a while, I would sit alone in front of Swami's photograph when nobody is in the hostel, when everybody's gone for some activity. I would just light a candle, and I would just play to the heart's content. And I think that is where I could really simulate back what I experienced in Swami's divine presence. In a sense, I think each of us have that opportunity. We sit in front of Swami in our own puja room, in our own, actually just sitting in our own chair and closing our eyes and imagining or visualizing, more than imagining, visualizing the Bhagavan in your heart, is what gets you to the same experience of staying and playing in Swami's physical presence. That I can vouch for it, because the joy that you get when nobody else is listening, nobody else is there, you are alone one to one with Swami. That joy of playing music or doing anything, in fact, is just fulfilling, because there are no comparisons. There's no one to praise you or complain. I mean, nothing. It is just you and Bhagavan. I think that is what Bhagavan gave me through that physical. It started as a physical experience of being in his proximity, but I think that I carry everywhere. Even now, as I said, close your eyes. You don't need to close your eyes. In fact, you can have Swami next to you, and when you really crave for that, he will sometimes give you the joy of letting you know that he is there, as clearly as we saw him physically. So that is what I think I'm reminded of those experiences. Sairam.
Thank you so much, brother. And I'm sure that our viewers, they feel what you felt when you played in front of Bhagwan. And can you now, if you would oblige us, can you offer a little bit of the Veena to Bhagwan and let us be inspired by your sharing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love to.
Brother, that was, I don't think I have words to express, as you said, the feelings that arise when you play from the heart. And you seem lost in divine communion through your offering to Bhagwan. And then when you look at the background photo you have, you could see Swami in incommunicable bliss. It was so beautiful and touching. And it is said, if music be the language of the soul, play on. And you have inspired all of us with that beautiful and soulful rendition. So, brother, I want to pose a question to you that was not planned. I feel the need to ask you, and I know that Bhagwan will give you the wherewithal to answer as he wants. You know, Swami, in one of his most popular frequent sayings by devotees, he says, love all, serve all. As an alumnus who has been under his physical divine presence and proximity for 7 years, you have seen that love in action. You have seen Swami love all and serve all. But to you, as a student under his watchful eye, how have you understood that statement? How have you processed it? And how are you practicing that in your daily life? Love all, serve all.
That's a beautiful uh, topic to think through. Uh, and this is certainly has been something that I have thought through on multiple occasions. What does actually love, I mean, even the word love mean? Swami talks about this in numerous discourses, and based on what Swami talked about, my understanding of love has always been that it is it's a nature of every one of us. So let's go through two parts. Love all, serve all is a two-part statement. One is first understanding what love is, and second is understanding what all really refers to. So I think the first part of love all was a very difficult statement for me personally to understand in practice, especially because you come across, you think love means to be uh, uh, to be able to put up with everybody, and in fact to be able to put up willingly and happily with every situation, anything that comes across, because you are loving. I think that is probably true as a what an experience would be, but to achieve a state where you really are emanating that, I think Swami talks about how we can only get to that by removing what is covering it. So love as a word is not something that we can describe, but I think you can become that by removing all the impurities. I think that is our life's sadhana. The practice, the spiritual practice that we do, is to be able to remove the impurities so that love that we each of us are can shine through. And in that sense, that is the stage where you really become, love all, serve all. But well, this is conceptually, that's what it is, and that's one way of understanding that. But in practice, how do we go about doing that? I think that actually is a serve all becomes the path to realizing love all. I think when you start getting into service, which is like Swami talked about, is so often so beautifully about what he means by service. Every waking moment, Swami wants us to be doing service to others, and so that aspect of service, where we are at wherever our understanding is, at a very worldly level, you can say, well, it is helping people out, and which is wonderful and which must be done. And I think that is what Swami gave the example, because that's kind of where I think we all start. At a physical level, material level, uh, everything that is in your capabilities that you can help others, I think we do that. And that actually leads to love shining through you and to them. And it's so beautiful because it always reflects back to you. And I think it's a continuous process where it grows. So as a student, that as a student that had the opportunity to stay in Swami's presence, love meant, see, because Bhagavan is love, that's it. But that said, it's not like Swami was not, Swami did not act upset when you didn't do right. See, that is a misunderstanding, in my opinion, where we think a loving person means he just needs to take everything and then just be quiet. But I think at the core, the important thing is that you love somebody, and sometimes mother loves a child and she gives a bit of medicine because it is needed. So the love that Swami talks about is a nature of our own real selves. And to get to that, Swami gave the mechanisms of service, and it's not a logical steps that it will take you, but these are all the preparations at which at some point you have a quantum leap. There are no real steps there from how you go from the worldly service and worldly aspects of understanding this to a love that Swami is really referring to. And that part is a quantum leap. And that's where I think the Sadguru walks you in the path. So practical aspects, I think we all know about it. At a conceptual level, Swami gave lots of explanations, and it's each one of us to synthesize these and achieve what Swami is asking us to pursue. Saira.
Thank you very much for your perspective, brother. And as an alumnus of the Sri Satya Sai Institute of Higher Learning, why do you feel it is important for us as spiritual aspirants to remain connected to Prashanti Nilayam? And especially you all as past students, I know I have read where Swami has said to you all that you should always come back to Prashanti Nilayam. You must always visit Prashanti Nilayam. Why is it important to remain connected to the physical Prashanti Nilayam? Share your perspective.
Absolutely. So that is not even a question for every student. In general, when you think about Prashanti Nilayam, that is where we grew up. That is where Swami molded each and every one of us. That is where we had the greatest, opportunity of our lives to witness the Divine Master in action. And so on a very material levels, Prashanti Nilayam is our Divine Mother's place. And the question of should we or should we not, it doesn't even come into picture. And that said, there's a second component to this. Swami always said, students are my property. I think, when I was listening to some radio side talk where Swami refers to devotees who have not necessarily been in Puttaparthi also as students. And he says, this is my student. See, anybody who studies Swami sincerely is a student of Swami. So students are Swami's property. And that Swami said it in so many discourses too. And actually to each and to many of us in groups when we went to Swami, Swami talked about, students are my property. I think the other side of the equation is that our property is Swami. Our property is really our relationship with Prashanti. That is what actually balances that equation. We are Swami's property, and we belong to Swami. Swami belongs to us. Each one of us, I think, will agree that this is the sentiment we must. We all have. I don't want to say we must. I think we all have this. And beyond this, Prashanti Nilayam is where the incarnation choose to come down and walk and leave his physical body, not leave Prashanti. Swami never said, I'm leaving Prashanti. He just left the physical body. So Prashanti, Swami is still there. And every one of us who have experiences that show that Prashanti Swami listens to you loud and clear. And he responds to you very, very rapidly, just the way he did when he was physically present. I mean, I can vouch for this statement because I've experienced it, and I've heard so many of devotees and students who have said exact same thing. So Bhagavan continues to respond, and it's not something unique to Bhagavan Satyasai Baba Garu. Shirdi Baba said the same thing. Shirdi Baba said, once I leave the body, he said, my bones will, continue to protect you. And he does. That incarnation, that power that he's there, will continue to be there. Now there are people who say, well, God is everywhere, so why can't we recreate Prashanti or God in our own places? You absolutely can. And Swami actually talks about this in one of the discourses where he talks about when people say, why do we need to go to temples? God is everywhere. He said, that is true, but temples, there is air everywhere. Then why do you put on fan? He said there are some areas where you actually can feel the presence of air, which actually gives you the comfort. There are areas where the Lord of the Lords chose to give you the presence out of His immense mercy and immense compassion to experience, to let you experience what it means to be in the presence of Divine. Prashanti Nilayam is that place. And then there is another aspect to this whole thing. We also know that even Adi Shankaracharya, when he incarnated, he went and re-energized all the Shakti Kshetras, all the Jyotirlingams. He actually goes and installs a yantra and he re-energizes that. And Bhagavan did the same too when in his incarnation. He goes to all the major spiritual centers. I don't want to call it religious. It is a spiritual center where he re-energizes those areas, sometimes by creating yantrams that they actually put under the under the ground, so that the spiritual seekers who come, get benefited. In fact, he did that for Vatavruksam too, like the Dhyanam, the meditation tree. Swami actually creates a yantram and puts it under the tree. So physically, Swami himself showed that there is a extraordinary power that he has given through the physical association to those places. So Prashanti Nilayam is the powerhouse of spiritual energy. Prashanti Nilayam is where the Lord continues to be there for eternity, for us to go there and then experience the divinity in person. And the connection to Prashanti Nilayam is, I think if you lose that, it is a tremendous loss in one's life. In fact, there may not be any more greater loss that you would go through losing the connection to Prashanti Nilayam in your physical presence. Now, people who talk about, well, we can recreate Prashanti anywhere, I think it is the same equation for people who say this, the God resides in our heart, and this only, when you are talking non-duality, people who achieve the Advaitic state don't talk because there is no second to talk. So purely, if you really achieve that Advaitic state where you don't see anything other than only one thing, that is a different plane. But most of us mortals are not in those planes yet. For us to achieve that, you need this connection. And when you really achieve that, obviously you don't need anything. In fact, they say once you achieve that, you don't even need the body. You drop the body within, I guess, 26 minutes or whatever. So I guess I wanted to mention this because I've heard some people talk about this, and I've always feel like, we may be misunderstanding the recreating Prashanti in our hearts without actually achieving the state where it really is meaningful to talk about that. And when you really meaningfully achieve that state, you don't talk about it. So that whole context of recreating Prashanti wherever you are is something that we can aspire for, but there is no substitute for the Prashanti Nilayam. That is what is my perspective. Saira.
Very, very beautifully explained, brother. And while you were speaking, it reminded me, especially the last statement that you made, where when you have become that Prashanti, you won't even speak it. I remember a disciple asked Ramakrishna Paramahansa, he said, Guruji, what does it feel like to be self realized, to become liberated? And he said, if the salt doll goes to measure the ocean, the moment it touches the water, it becomes one with the ocean. Who is to come back to tell?
It's beautiful. Beautiful.
So, brother, one last final question in this very, very inspiring and wonderful interview. And many people says when I ask them this question, it's the $1 trillion question. But it's very simple. Based on your understanding of Swami's teachings, based on your practicing of Swami's teachings, what can you share to others who would like to make the world a better place? For example, if somebody comes to you and said, Brother Durjati, what can I do to make the society a better place? What can you share with such a person?
It's a beautiful question, and it's a thought on many of our minds as we have our children grow into the world which appears to be going in the wrong way, at least in some instances. But that said, I think obviously I'm not qualified to answer a question like that. But I would go back to what Bhagavan told all of us. Every one of us, Swami said, don't worry about the world part of it. You worry about yourself and you become a better human being. You get on the path of realizing who you are, which is the pursuit of truth, pursuit of the reasons for your own existence. And so this is important, that without every human being changing, we will not be able to bring the societies to change. That is the reality. No matter what, a legislature cannot make a society to be good. What makes a society be good is when each and every person in the society becomes better. And for all of us in this world that we share and live together, we all have different beliefs, different religions that we follow, different faiths, different societies that we live in. But when you look at that, that is what I think Bhagavan came to teach. While there is so much of variety, the underlying principles, even when you are not a believer in God, the underlying principle is still the same that everybody believes in. Every person, whether you believe in God or not, you'll believe that, well, I should respect other person, I should treat him well. If he needs help, I will help him. And at core, it really boils down to whether they say it or not, whether they see it that way or not. It is the brotherhood of humanity and fatherhood of the divinity is what actually will get to a society that we'll all be joyfully enjoying to live within in that society's framework. And to get there, I think Swami's message is the only thing that will get us there, which is individual transformation. And individual transformation leads to families, and families leads to societies, societies leads to countries, and countries leads to the nations, the world. This is what Swami actually talked about. And we asked Swami when we had an interview with Swami as we were ready to leave after graduating Swami's institutions. We asked Swami, tell us, how are we to behave in society? And Swami said, just live normal lives. Just remember what Swami taught you, and make sure that you don't bring bad name to Swami. That's it. That is it. That's all he expects from each of us, because the world is created by the Master, and he knows how to fix the world if there are real problems in the world. We have to worry because he gave us the free will to fix ourselves. We have to worry to use the free will that he gave to fix ourselves within our capabilities with the Master's help. I think that's what will get us all into that. Practically, each of us can look at what is accessible for us, to give you a structure to your own families, your own children, your religion. I would say Swami, obviously, if you can get in, Swami's teachings, practice it, internalize it, test him, experience it, experiment him, and experience him. That is going to be the joy of your lives when you go on this path. And that's what I would say, for everybody who's had the luxury of, I shouldn't say luxury, who had the privilege of listening to or coming to know about Swami, take him seriously. Go down the path of, pursuing and practicing Swami. Listen to Swami's discourses. Grow and experience. And that's a beautiful journey that we're all going to be on. Saira.
Thank you very, very much, Brother Durjati. It reminds me as we close, if I should summarize exactly what you've said in one of Swami's teachings, he said, if there's righteousness in the heart, there will be beauty in the character. When there's beauty in the character, there will be harmony in the home. When there's harmony in the home, there will be order in the nation. When there's order in the nation, there will be peace in the world. So, as the Christian hymn says, if there be peace in the world, let it begin with me.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much for that sharing. That world transformation begins when we individually change. And we have to take responsibility for our space to be the best we can be. So Dr. Durjati Mudigonda, the Sri Satya Sai Global Council Trinidad and Tobago, expresses gratitude and appreciation to you for taking the time to share your personal journey and transformation at the lotus feet of our beloved Mother Sai. May Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba continue to bless and guide you. May you continue to be a loving instrument in His divine mission. Jai Sai Ram.
Jai Sai Ram. Brother Fayez, thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity. It's a privilege and it's always a bliss to think about Swami. So thank you for this great opportunity. Sai Ram.